In 1480 Romania, Prince Vlad is forced to leave his beloved wife, Elizabetha, to lead his armies into battle. After securing a glorious victory, word reaches him that his wife is under attack, and he frantically rides to find her. He finds her in the treacherous forest of wolves, a place littered with bear traps, fleeing from enemy soldiers. Her horse is caught first, and in the chaos, Elizabetha herself steps on another trap, becoming snared. As Vlad arrives, he hurls his sword at a soldier advancing on her, but in a cruel twist of fate, the blade strikes Elizabetha instead. Vlad is left in agony, clutching his wife as she dies in his arms. Consumed by rage and despair, Vlad confronts the Pope, cursing God for abandoning his wife. He demands a miracle to resurrect her, but the Pope refuses. In a final act of blasphemy, Vlad murders the Pope with a holy cross and renounces his faith. As a storm brews and the statue of Christ weeps, Vlad merely smiles with defiance before soldiers drag him away. 400 years later, a priest arrives at a psychiatric hospital to investigate a peculiar case concerning the Queen of England. The patient is Maria, a woman documented as 130 years old, who reportedly went insane upon seeing a bishop at her wedding. Chained in a high-security cell, the priest immediately notices her fangs and realizes she is a vampire, the first ever captured alive. He explains that vampires can tolerate ambient light but not direct sunlight. To prove his point, he exposes her skin to a sunbeam, causing it to burn, and holds up a cross, which spontaneously combusts in her presence. He ultimately uses blood to compel her cooperation. The priest examines Maria's neck, finding telltale bite marks. He reveals the church has been battling vampires for centuries, though they have never found the original. Overcome by bloodlust, Maria confesses that her master, the progenitor vampire, is a prince coming to the city to find his princess. Meanwhile, a solicitor named Jonathan travels to a massive, remote castle after being abandoned by his carriage driver. There, he meets the castle's master, who introduces himself as Prince Vlad, also known as Count Dracula. During dinner, which Dracula does not eat, the Count suddenly kills a rat and drinks its blood. Jonathan explains he is there to finalize the purchase of an old abbey in Paris. When Jonathan accidentally drops his crucifix, Dracula seizes it and hurls it into the fireplace. Dracula then escorts Jonathan to his room, warning him not to leave it during the night, and commands a stone gargoyle to stand guard. Inside his room, Jonathan discovers a history book about Vlad, but the portrait of the prince has been torn out. Simultaneously, the priest searches Maria's cell and finds that missing page, a portrait of Elizabetha. In the middle of the night, a curious Jonathan leaves his room and discovers Dracula sleeping in a coffin in the cellar. He is promptly knocked unconscious by the gargoyle. When he awakes, Jonathan finds himself bound and hanging upside down, as Dracula prepares to drain his blood. When Jonathan cries out, asking how God could create such a monster, Dracula merely laughs. Jonathan's final wish is to know Dracula's story. Amused, Dracula cuts him down and begins to recount his past, the funeral of Elizabetha and how he has waited centuries for her pure soul to be reborn. He admits his profound loneliness and his envy of mortals, for they are blessed with the ability to die. He recalls a day he fell asleep by Elizabetha's tomb. The next morning, in utter despair, he climbed to the nearest window and tried to end his own life, but he survived the fall. Dracula tried again and again, but no matter how many times he fell, he could not die. Knowing he could not search the world for Elizabetha himself, Dracula devised a plan to make her find him. For over a century, he crafted a unique perfume from the most beautiful and magical flowers found in famous gardens. When he tested the scent in Italy, women were instantly mesmerized and followed him. The perfume was so powerful that Dracula could attend parties and force everyone to dance in perfect sync under his control. One day, Dracula believed he had finally found Elizabetha, but the woman was not her. The mistake caused him to weep. Realizing he had been lost in revelry, not true love, he decided to stop searching and let others do it for him. In the middle of the party, Dracula bit every woman in the room, turning them all into vampires, including Maria. Afterward, Dracula returned to Elizabetha's tomb, opened the casket, and smashed it, only to find nothing but dust inside. The sight broke him completely, and from that day on, Dracula vowed never to leave his castle again. The gargoyle statues became his loyal servants, bringing him riches while continuing the search for Elizabetha in his stead. Back in the present, Jonathan says he can understand such an intense love, as he, too, is engaged. He shows Dracula a locket containing a picture of his fiancée. Upon seeing the photograph, Dracula is overcome with emotion. recognizing the woman as the reincarnation of Elizabetha. Grateful to Jonathan for inadvertently helping him find his lost love, Dracula decides to spare his life. He summons all his gargoyles, ordering them to bring him copious amounts of blood, as he must become young and beautiful again before meeting Elizabetha. In Paris, the priest shows Dumont the portrait he found, explaining they must find the woman with this face to lure Dracula out. The priest reads from a text, which explains that while God can deny death to a blasphemer, he will grant forgiveness and release the curse if the person truly repents. This implies that if they kill Dracula, all the vampires he created will become human again. Just then, Simon enters the room, sees the portrait, and exclaims that he just saw an identical woman in the visitors' area. Dumont and the priest rush next door and find Maria's close friend. They had met a few days prior at a party, and Maria had been inseparable from her since. Maria had been kind until her wedding day, when the sight of the bishop made her snap. The woman, Mina, admits she is also confused about her own wedding, as she sometimes feels she doesn't belong in this era. At the abbey, Dracula arrives disguised as a beggar. The nuns take pity on him and offer him shelter. But the moment he enters the chapel, Dracula drops his disguise. He sprays his special perfume on the statue of Jesus, causing all the nuns to flock to the chapel. They kneel, trembling with desire, and slowly surround him. Without hesitation, Dracula begins to drain their blood, one by one. Back in the castle, Jonathan waits until he is unseen, then throws a blanket toward some tools to pull them closer and break his chains. When a gargoyle enters, it spots Jonathan climbing through the window. It immediately cuts the blanket, causing Jonathan to lose his grip, but he manages to cling to the wall. The gargoyles try to reach him through the crevices, but failing that, one uses an iron hook to strike him, knocking him loose. Jonathan tumbles down the snowy embankment and lands on a frozen lake. When one gargoyle lunges after him, the ice breaks, and it sinks into the water. Seeing this, the other creatures dare not advance. Jonathan scrambles away in a panic, desperate to escape. Some time later, a rejuvenated and healthy-looking Dracula arrives at the asylum. He uses his perfume to control Simon, forcing him to lead him to Maria's room. Maria tells him she has found Elizabetha, and Dracula rewards her by letting her feed on Simon. The next morning, the priest is studying when he finds a photograph of Vlad. He is then summoned to the hospital, where Dumont reports that Maria has vanished. Simon is found tied to the bed, having been turned into a vampire. The priest recognizes Simon's fangs and the strong scent of perfume on his clothes. As Dumont describes Maria's abductor, the priest realizes Mina is in grave danger. At her boarding house, Mina answers a knock and is stunned to see Maria, looking healthy and claiming Dumont has discharged her. Maria says she has a friend who is eager to meet Mina and tells her to change into nicer clothes. The two women go to a hotel, where Dracula is waiting. The moment he sees his wife's face again, Dracula is moved to tears. After paying her gentle compliments, he kisses her hand, which gives Mina a brief vision of the two of them together. Mina pulls her hand back, and she and Maria leave to attend a festival. Dracula follows them quietly as the two women enjoy the performances. Upon entering a haunted house, they are accidentally separated, and Mina gets lost. She screams when a fake skeleton startles her, and Dracula immediately appears to gently lead her out. At a shooting gallery, Dracula teaches Mina how to aim, and in his embrace, she experiences another flash of a distant memory. Afterward, Dracula invites them to his hotel room to rest while waiting for the fireworks. Mina and Dracula talk, and he hands her a small music box. As Dracula opens the lid, the familiar melody causes Mina to see images of her past life, as if she were Elizabetha. Terrified, she pulls her hand away and accuses Dracula of bewitching her. Dracula tries to explain about Elizabetha and his belief that her soul has been reborn, but Mina insists she is only Mina. The conversation ends as Dracula gives her the music box as a gift. Maria then pulls Mina away to watch the fireworks. At the end of the evening, Dracula escorts Mina home, leaving her with a radiant smile. But that smile vanishes the moment she opens her door and finds the priest and Dumont tending to Jonathan, who is lying in her living room. The priest recounts what happened to her fiancé, but Mina refuses to believe Dracula could be so cruel. The priest is forced to explain that Dracula is a vampire who survives by drinking human blood and uses a special perfume to control his victims. He checks Mina's neck and is relieved to find no bite marks. Mina flees to her room, crying in despair. In her distress, she opens the music box, and the visions of Elizabetha return. She is only startled out of it when Dracula appears beside her. Mina demands he leave, and as Dracula attempts to climb out the window, Mina mistakes it for a suicide attempt and rushes to stop him. She then accuses him of deceiving her, forcing Dracula to insist he never used the perfume to control her. To prove it, he throws the bottle into the fire. When Mina confronts him about drinking blood, Dracula admits it but promises she will never be his victim. Just then, Mina's nose begins to bleed. Dracula gently catches the blood on his finger and licks it, then takes her hand, whispering words of love. The past life memories flood back, and when she hears the last words Dracula ever spoke to Elizabetha, Mina realizes she is, in fact, Elizabetha reincarnated. "My love," she calls him, and kisses him passionately. They are quickly swept up in passion, and Mina begs for immortality to be with him forever. Dracula bites her neck, granting her eternal life. At that exact moment, the priest smells the familiar perfume and instantly knows Dracula is in the house. He grabs a gun and runs to Mina's room, but it's empty. The priest and Dumont conclude Dracula has taken Mina back to his castle, and Jonathan volunteers to guide them. Meanwhile, Maria meets up with Henry. She acts tenderly toward him to lower his guard. Just as she is about to bite his neck, the priest's group appears. Maria snarls and attacks, forcing the priest to shoot her. But Maria recovers instantly, downs Henry, and captures the priest, intending to kill him. Jonathan quickly grabs a sword from the wall and decapitates Maria. Her head flies off and hits Dumont, while her body continues to strangle the priest before collapsing. Seeing Maria's corpse still twitching, the priest plunges a holy cross directly into her heart, finishing her for good. In Romania, servants carry a coffin into the castle. Dracula and Mina emerge from it, and he gives her a tour of the castle. After meeting the living gargoyles, Mina opens the music box and puts on Elizabetha's gown. Outside the gates, the priest's group has arrived, accompanied by a platoon of armed soldiers. They wait for the servants to leave, then charge, holding the gate open for the others to follow. A soldier fires at the main door, while artillery from the forest begins bombarding the castle, causing parts of it to collapse. Dracula tells Mina to stay in the room while he goes to fight, but she is terrified as cannon fire destroys the ceiling. The gargoyles swoop down to fight the soldiers, killing them one by one, but the army is too large, and the men breach and capture the castle. Jonathan leads the group down to the cellar, while soldiers search the upper floors. Mina sees them approaching and locks her door. In the cellar, soldiers unload their guns into a coffin, but Dracula appears behind Jonathan, knocks him out, and calls him an ungrateful wretch. He draws his sword and lunges at the soldiers, moving like a shadow and cutting them down in an instant. Even as more soldiers arrive, Dracula slaughters them all. Henry seizes the opportunity to fire 2 pistols at him, but the bullets are useless. Dracula leaps forward and bites Henry's neck, then waves his hand, slamming the door shut to block the other soldiers. He points his sword at the priest's throat, forcing him to listen. The priest argues that God never wanted him to kill in his name, and God does not wish to destroy his own creation. When humans kill, they do so for themselves, not for God. The priest says he was sent by God to save Dracula, but the count replies that his only salvation is Mina. The priest counters that Dracula will only be Mina's damnation, her hell. Hearing Mina scream from her room, Dracula races off, ordering the gargoyles to hold back the soldiers. As the gargoyles fight fiercely in the hall, Dracula massacres the remaining soldiers in that wing. When all is silent, he smashes open the door to Mina's room, pulling her into a desperate, loving embrace. The priest follows right behind, but Dracula slams the door in his face. From the outside, the priest desperately pleads that if Dracula truly loves his wife, he must do the right thing. Despite Mina's weeping and begging, Dracula steps outside and locks the door, leaning against it in silence. The priest prays to God, then plunges a wooden stake directly into Dracula's heart, ending his life. Afterward, Mina pulls Dracula's body into the room, where they share one final declaration of love before his body turns to ash. All the lights in the castle are extinguished, and the gargoyles transform back into human children. Jonathan arrives to find Mina crying over the ashes, which then rise and dissipate into the air. Realizing he has lost her love forever, Jonathan turns and walks away in silence. Outside the castle, the ashes of Dracula scatter in the wind, dissolving with a prayer of immortal love.